So we come this morning to the fourth question that we can ask ourselves when we want to speak wisely, effectively. And the fourth question is it beneficial? Is it for the welfare of self and others? And so a statement might be true. A statement that what we're going to say might be timely. It's the right time. A statement we say might be done kindly, supportingly, nourishing. The way we say it might be gentle and appropriate. However, the person we're talking to, the situation we're in, what we're going to say has no benefit. Maybe because people are not going to listen to it. People are closed off from hearing it, too distracted. And so it's not beneficial to say it. And because it has no impact, it has no onward leading purpose. It has no purpose to say it if it's not going to be received. And so rather than exhausting ourselves by insisting we have to say it because it's true, because we're struggling, because we're trying to solve a problem and make things better, of course, ideally we would have a chance to have a conversation if that's the case. But if it's not going to go anywhere, if there's no benefit from saying it, there's no receptivity to what we're saying, why tire ourselves out? Why exhaust ourselves? Maybe we need to wait until it is beneficial. So it comes back to the idea as a timely. For you it might be timely, it might be the only time, but still, if it's not beneficial to say it, it has no purpose to say it because it's not received, then maybe it's not the time to say it, maybe it's not the thing to say. Or if we ask ourselves the question, is it beneficial? Then we can say, well, actually, saying the truth right now is not beneficial. Saying the truth kindly is not really beneficial right now. This is not what the person needs to hear. This is not leading onward. Now, the word benefit here is a very significant word. How do we know what's beneficial? How do we know what is welfare for people? One of the meanings for this word in Pali is atta, is it has a purpose. So to speak for a purpose. So in other words, don't speak pointlessly. Don't just speak because you want to speak. Don't speak the truth. Don't speak the truth kindly. And in some way, if it's kindly and timely. But don't if it doesn't really have a purpose. So when you ask the question, is it beneficial, is also a very powerful version of that question, is to ask yourself, for what purpose am I saying what I'm going to say? What is the purpose? And there can be multiple layers of purpose in what we say. If someone asks you for directions on the street, you could say the purpose of responding was to give them the directions. But there might be a deeper layer where we really want to impress people we're with that we know the right directions, and we never want to be wrong. And there was one country I visited where it seemed like I was told that no one will ever admit that they don't know the directions. So you have to ask at least 2 or 3 people, because the first person might give you a wrong direction just because they think they have to do something. So maybe there's one to impress, maybe below that is a fear of rejection or fear that people will judge us negatively if we don't give a good. And so there's all these layers of purposes when we speak, there are things going on. And to ask the question, what's the purpose that I have for saying something, can really be valuable, because sometimes the purpose for saying something is not really the wisest purpose. And to really understand ourselves well enough to understand why we're going to say what we're going to say, even the truth, even kindly, is very, very important. But what's interesting is the expression the Buddha uses to talk about, to speak what is beneficial, is actually a compound word. And the word for beneficial, atta, has many meanings, and can be welfare, benefit, advantage. It also apparently can also mean like a blessing. Speak what is a blessing. It can also mean speak what's purposeful, for a purpose. It can mean speak what is related to the goal. And so in Buddhism, sometimes atta refers to the ultimate goal of liberation and freedom. So but it's a compound word, and the second half is samhita. And samhita means possessed with or connected with, endowed with. Speak endowed with benefit. Speak endowed with the purpose. Speak connected to the goal. And that relates to what I did in the guided meditation, is that it isn't not only speak what's beneficial for a purpose. Is this beneficial for the person I'm speaking to? Is this beneficial for what's going to happen in a situation? But speak speak in a way that's beneficial now. Speak in a way that's connected or endowed with the purpose of Buddhism, the goal of Buddhism. If the goal is to not cling, speak in a way that has no clinging in it. If the goal of Buddhism is to be free of greed, hate, and delusion, this is one of the primary ways the Buddha talks about the goal of liberation, of enlightenment, is the absence of greed, hatred, and confusion or delusion. So can the way we speak partake of that? Can it be endowed with elements of that? And so then this fourth criteria really is now connecting speech to our practice itself. It's really saying speech itself can be endowed with practice, can be as rich as a form of practice as meditation practice. Because the core aspect of Buddhist practice, is not just to be mindful. The core aspect is to be mindful so that we can be in the world without clinging, without greed, hatred, and delusion. And nowadays, with all the hatred that's going on in our society, it's even more important to understand the value of non-hatred. And it's maybe more important to speak up for truth, for what's right, for the ending of brutality and harm and hatred, and economic exploitation, all these things that go on in our society, in our world as a whole. It's important to speak up for it, against it. But it's also important to do so endowed with liberation, endowed with the qualities of the goal of practice itself. The means in practice, the means to freedom, should contain elements of the goal. It's not that the means and the goal are the same, but the means should mirror the goal. And so this is where the topic of this issue of what's happening in our relationship to it is so important. It's in the relationship we have that we can begin exercising and finding and practicing pieces of that goal, pieces of non-clinging, non-greed, non-hatred, non-confusion. And we're not confused if we know we can always be mindful. We're not confused if we know that the purpose of all we're doing is really to do what we're doing without clinging. That's one of the purposes in the multiple layers of purposes. So speaking can be an integral, essential form of Buddhist practice. I hope that we speak. I hope that we learn to speak well and speak up and speak strongly and clearly for all kinds of issues, with our friends, our family, when we need to speak up and be clear. In our society, when we need to stand up for civil rights, we need to stand up against brutality, against the harm that people are doing to each other in all directions, in all political directions, in all kinds of ways. of course we should speak up. But can we speak up? Can we speak remembering that we're practicing? We're practicing for the greatest benefit, the greatest welfare of self and others. And the greatest welfare is found through exercising our freedom to relate to what's happening without any greed, without any hatred whatsoever, without any confusion or delusion about what's going on. This is radical. So to ask ourselves when we were speaking the question, is it beneficial, is a rich and very important, multifaceted question. Is it beneficial for purpose? Is it purposeful, beneficial purpose? Is it spoken in a beneficial way? Is it spoken in a way that's endowed with qualities of liberation itself? Is it endowed with non-clinging? And as I said in this guided meditation, we will cling. Unless we're fully enlightened, clinging will happen. The important question, when we see it, how do we relate to that? And to then not cling to the clinging. When we do have impulses which are shouldn't be acted on, that are harmful or difficult aspects of ourselves that arise, of course things like that arise. The important thing is not that we have these things, difficult thoughts, even hate, that arises. The important thing is, do we see it and do we relate to it in a way that is non-clinging, without picking it up, without being involved, without saying it? So if we can ask ourselves the question, is it beneficial in all the ways I'm talking about? And it turns out the answer is no, in significant ways. Then don't say it. Or what might be needed is find the inner strength to not say it. It's hard sometimes not to speak. The impulse to speak, the drive to speak, the need to speak is so strong. It's so connected to the deep emotional reservoirs or experiences that we have. But if it's going to cause harm, don't say it in a way that causes harm. Find a different way to speak. Find a way to speak about what's happening for you, what's happening in the world, what's going on, in a way that is beneficial, has a good purpose, and is endowed with, connected to the goal of practice itself, connected to freedom, connected to compassion, to love. That would be to speak what is beneficial. So, thank you, and so we have one more to do tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Thank you.